Good day, Kabiba, and welcome to our Philippine Professional Standard for Teachers Domain 3 Diversity of Learners webinar series. For the discussion this afternoon, our topic will be on learners' linguistic, cultural, and socio-economic and religious backgrounds. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you register to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.revolgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions in the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by a speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vival webinars. Experience learning, Kamibal. And now to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker for today. Our speaker for today is a consultant evaluator of K-12 Philippine Basic Education Curriculum and academic consultant for Sisters of Mary Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brother Roderick M. Aguirre.
Good afternoon. I was waiting for my camera to turn on. I think I'm having difficulty with my connectivity right now, and I was already talking. And well, I know why. That's one of the many problems with uh, online learning. So again, once again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. And this afternoon, we are continuing on to the PPS. And I'm just doing something about my camera, so I would not look so my hair is getting longer and curly and all. Anyway, so this is now continuation of the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers or PPST, and now we are on Domain 3, and I'm glad to deliver you a small webinar on the second strand of Domain 3. Before I would like to share with you my PowerPoint presentation so we can begin. I'm sorry. I just woke up. I slept for 30 minutes just to get more. We call it a cat nap. Anyway, so it's PPST Domain 3 Strand 2 Learners Linguistic and Cultural, Social, Emotional, and Religious Backgrounds. What the PPST aims here to do is that teachers can model exemplary teaching practices that recognize and affirm diverse linguistic, cultural, socioeconomic, and religious backgrounds to promote learner success. So I'll be sharing with you some of the worldwide current trends. Oh, diba? Worldwide current trends. Yeah, I do because I advocate multilingual and multicultural education, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world. And I'm doing a lot of readings and connecting with a lot of experts in Mexico and Australia and Canada and also in Singapore. And we've been exchanging lots of dialogues on the current practices of how teachers can accommodate multiculturality, diversity within the classrooms, and not necessarily the whole school per se, but definitely should be the responsibility of the whole school to ensure that the diversity of our learners should be seen as a positive effect on the learning, the continuity of the learning, and even for the success of the learning of our students. And we have to use that with our utmost advantage because this opportunity allows other students to learn other cultures. And by learning other cultures, our students become more open-minded and they, one way or the other, they improve their linguistic abilities and their ability to adjust to other people's differences. And what we would like to advocate here to teachers that you teachers also help students to be more not just tolerant but accepting and understanding of differences, because there's no part of this world that diversity does not exist. Everywhere we go, diversity is there. Even at home, there's always diversity. There would be a difference of belief system of one brother to another, to a sister to another. Even twins may not have their own personality. On the perspective of personality alone, personality development and attitude and mindset would be definitely diverse within a family. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're not only talking about just diversity in terms of ethnicity. We're not only talking here about diversity of religions, because I've encountered a lot of teachers, a lot of quote unquote experts on multicultural education here in the Philippines. And the core basis for them for coming up with a multicultural education design for schools would be based on religion. And I said that's only one, a very narrow perspective of looking at learners' diversity. Linguistic and personality and culture is one of those many things that we need to consider. That's why in the Philippine K-12 education, we have thought of the MTBMLE, not necessarily because of the linguistic backgrounds and linguistic diversity of our students, but because we would like to acknowledge that the Philippines is an archipelago and we are consist of many cultures. We don't want to say subcultures. We would like to say that all the cultures of the Philippines are equal in stature because they have their own belief system, and that allows the people within that culture to communicate with each other and they do understand each other. When they go outside their culture, that's where they have difficulty, and that's what we say diversity comes in. We need to allow this kind of differences so that by interacting with different cultures and different types of people, we get to get along with these people, and we become better individuals. On that note, this is what we're going to do today, to this afternoon. I know it's been an hour, but I'll try to make it the most of your time. Okay, my hair is I'm making fun of myself. It's really curly. Like sabi po nila, di ba, pag kulot ng buhok, salo. I hope not, right? I'm gonna do my best to deliver my thing. Anyway, so these are the things that we're going to talk about. We'll start with the trivia on learners diversity, things that we should know together at about learners diversity. But I think we try to ignore it. But as teachers and educators, it's really important for us to uh, understand and always bear in mind this learners diversity principles. That will be a trivia for us, okay? And do tell the parents too. Second would be the self-aware activity. I prepared some questions based on the principles that have been circulated around the world that would ask as a these are set of questions that teachers should ask themselves to gauge whether they are actualizing the multiculturality design of taking care of diversity inside the classroom. So very simple though, just about 7 questions. We're not going to answer that, but we're just going to ask these questions ourselves and somehow ask ourselves, come up with a self-reflection, whether we are taking care of this area of multiculturality, diversity of our learners. Next, we'll have a discussion on certain questions to answer so that we will have better understanding of learners' diversity in terms of taking care of the linguistic diversity, the cultural diversity, the social-emotional diversity, and not to mention also the religious diversity of our students, and that how to take care and use that as an element in making learning as a success inside the classroom. And that could be one of the many struggles that we are encountering right now because we're delivering our goods via distance education. How do we embed multicultural education, diversity, take care of the diversity of our learners at the same time doing distance education? Quite a task, I know, quite a task. But as an educator, we have to struggle a lot, and then it's something that we need to take on because that's part of our responsibility. It's part of our it's part of our responsibility. It's within our territory, so we have to do it. Otherwise, no one's gonna do it. Next, we'll have a little bit of open forum for the people out there who have some questions about some vague questions and the situations they are in right now about some say differences of behaviors of students because of their behaviors at home that makes them quite different from the other students. So how do we handle those kinds of behaviors? It's quite diverse, I know, but how do we deal with those? So these are some specific situations that you may want to ask me later, and I will answer those questions as honest as I can. And then eventually I'll provide you with challenge, but I'll end with a parable. Okay, a parable that I think you've read about it, but I think it will have a different impact after we have discussed all of these things that we're going to answer this afternoon. I think I need a haircut. Every time I'm looking at myself right now, I feel uncomfortable with my hair. Anyway, so let's proceed to previous learners diversity. So there's the things, these are the things that we need to bear in mind about diversity. We need to understand that the core of diversity of every individual is because of the culture. And we have defined that culture refers to the totality of practices which define one group of people. Sorry. Let me just change my, there we go. I'll just put that on top. People in distinction from another. And we also have to admit that within one community, there are also cultures that emerges from one family to another, even if they belong to one superculture. I would just use it so a superculture. Within there will be substratum. Within a culture, there are substrata, and each substratum would be, say, the family would have their own unique culture of how they manifest, how they use this belief system in interacting and molding their children, and it's basically the choice of the families. And this is what we're trying to say, that even if we're all Filipinos in the Philippines, even if we are Tagalog people, Tagalog talaga, or no, it's like I feel like I belong in the Tagalog regions. Well, I've been here in the Tagalog regions for more than half of my life, so I believe that I'm more Tagalog than Bisaya pa rin po ako. Pero I could say I'm a multicultural person. Anyway, my point there is that it defines who we are, and every individual is a composite picture of many cultures that he or she has taken in, and it will never leave him and becomes part of the person, part of ourselves, and therefore we see it as a form of learning. Okay, so there's what we call as culture. It's not working. Okay, on the local perspective, that could be the family within the community, the locality, the region, ethnicity. That would be the core personality of our students. But as our students, as individuals, we don't remain in our houses. We do not remain in our own respective communities. One way or the other, we get to interact with other people with different cultures, like our students are able to interact with other students coming from different communities with different cultures, and hence they come up with a more composite culture, integrating their own local culture with the national culture or other local cultures, building onto a national culture. Because as they move up to the next grade level, we gradually introduce them in education the national identity as a Filipino, not just a Bisaya, not just a Tagalog, not just a Kapampangan, but being also part of the whole Philippine, being a citizen. So this is what the education was all about. We would like our students to think nationally and globally, but it's acting locally. This is what's good about taking care of diversity inside the classroom. And by doing that, our students would go beyond the national capacity or national scope or national environment or community. They go outside. A lot of Filipinos are thriving outside of the Philippines. They are OFWs. They are professionals outside the Philippines. There are artists outside the Philippines. And what's good about that is that we've been hearing that Filipinos are able to adjust to these situations. I know that a lot of people would say that itong mga Pilipino to, disiplinado pag nasa ibang bansa, pero dito sa Pilipinas sila. But we should not see that as a negative thing. We could see that as a positive thing, that Filipinos are able to adopt in situations not just in the Philippines or outside the Philippines. Kung sinabi po natin ng mga Pilipino hindi po disiplado sa Pilipinas, then it's the culture in the Philippines that's problematic, not the culture outside. Because when we say culture, when we immerse ourselves with another culture, it is the person who's entering the culture who's supposed to adjust, not the culture adjusting to the person entering the culture. So that's what, in that way, education has is successful or was successful in allowing our individuals, our Filipinos, to be able to adjust to the other cultures. And that's one indicator of a successful multicultural education in the Philippines. It's just that they're not able to adjust to probably becoming more disciplined here in the Philippines, probably because that's our culture. Matitigas lang talaga ang ulo ng mga Pilipino na pag lumabas, ibang klase ang behavior ulit. Dahil nga, marunong mag-adjust. E paano yung mga banyaga, pagpunta ng Pilipinas, di ba hindi sila nag-adjust sa Pilipinas, sila may problema, hindi ang Pilipinas. Diba? So people who are not able to adjust to the culture, we could see that as a failure of education, our educational system, where they come from. So at least on that note, we could say that the Philippine education is rather successful in making our graduates be able to adopt the different cultures. Diba? We are culturally linguistically good. All right. So the culture of every individual, where they come from, be it local or national or global, improves their linguistic knowledge. The more culture you know, the more words you know. The more words you know, the more concepts you know. The more concepts you know, the more belief system, the more knowledge you gain. Ganun lang po yan. Mas maraming language, mas maraming kultura, mas marami kang alam. Okay? At kung marami kang alam, mas marami kang mas malawak ang pag-intindi mo, mas malawak ang yung mindset, as opposed to other people who says only one culture perspective. You have a broader perspective, so you are more understanding. We become more understanding of other people. That's linguistic knowledge. Next, we have social and emotional development. We're able to, by interacting with other peoples and other cultures, we hone to the most, to the utmost, to the best, our socialization skills, that we are able to adjust to other people, not thinking that bahala sila, mag-adjust sila sa akin. We don't think by allowing our students to interact with other people by collaboration, a collaborative activity, they get to realize that they are part of a whole, not an individual who would just have to thrive by themselves or on their own. But they need to understand that this is a society that we live in. It is a community that we live in, and by allowing doing some strategies like collaborative activities, students get to adjust to the members of the group, and on that note, they're able to partake some of the tasks, and that realizes that if they don't do their task assigned to them, the whole group will suffer. Kaya importante pong collaboration sa loob ng classroom because it builds, it allows students to be immersed in diversity. And by allowing them to immerse in diversity, social and emotional development occurs among our students. Okay? Yeah, that's also one of the downside of homeschooling. So pag homeschooling, dapat mas maraming chance na ang gawin ng mga magulang na magpa-socialize kasi nasa bahay lang, hindi nabibigyan ng chance kasi ang bata na mag-socialize ng ibang tao. Yeah, the kids are able to socialize with other age group, but iba po kasi ang socialization within the age group. It happened to me, I wasn't able to, I had difficulty interacting with my same age. Parang sabi ko, parang hindi ko kaya makipaglaro sa mga same age ko when I was growing up. Pero eventually I was able to get out of it because of my brothers. So I had to play outside. Anyway, that's what we're doing. Interaction and socialization. Also, our culture has influence on our beliefs in the way we understand things, the way we accept things, the way we disregard things, the way we receive and perceive the environment is based on our culture and belief system. So therefore, the more culture that we have, the broader our belief system is. But if we only have a specific, like our local belief system, a local culture, and that will be our belief system, we get to be narrow-minded. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just that it would be difficult for other people to understand the belief system of other people, like the standards of beauty. People who have not encountered African culture would say, ano ba ng klase mga Africans yan? Nag-ano sila? Their standard of beauty is yung pataasan ng rings po dito. Para sa kanila, maganda na ba yun? Isa amin hindi. Wait. Don't judge them based on your belief system. Try to understand them on their perspective. So kung yun ang beauty po nila, let's look at the perspective. Bakit naging beautiful sila? So let's look at things on the lens of other people's eyes, not just ours. So this is what culture is all about. Giving our students different lenses to look at to look at the society. Hence, culture provide us with different lenses to look at situations. Di ba? That's what I would like about diversity of learners. We are teaching our students to acquire different lenses so that they will have different perspectives to look at a problem, to look at a situation, to look at a lesson, and they get to be better at learning things. All right. So this is our trivia. Ang dami trivia pa lang po yan, ha? All right. And also would like us to be reminded as a trivia information for us that when we talk about diversity, we're talking about every individual will have their own differences. Within oneself is a diverse individual. Okay? Sa sarili pa lang, diverse na siya agad. Tayong lahat. Bawat isa sa atin, may sarili tayong diversity. So, diverse na nga ang bawat tao, bawat estudyante, within oneself, diverse pa siya. Okay? Diversity in a sense that hindi magkakapare-pareho ang levels ng isang tao. Hindi pwedeng isang tao. There will be some situations na mas magaling ang bata sa mental skills o cognitive development. Okay? May mga bata naman na magaling sa language development or sa kanyang language skills or pwedeng both po cognitive development and language development. And then we have also physical, all right? Also, students who have social emotional development. So one way or the other, our students, learners, kung pinag-usapan natin at adults. So ang ating learners is striving, going through the process and the journey of becoming a holistic individual. And becoming a holistic individual is helping our students understand their diversity within themselves. That say, ano pa ang kulang sa akin? Magaling ako sa cognition. I have developed my cognition. What about my language skills? What about my physical development? So all of these four areas as the holistic development of individuals, as a diversity of perspective of individual learners is something that we need to look at into. All right. So we are so concerned about the diversity of different students, but we also have to acknowledge diversity within us students. Okay. So doon po natin tinitingnan na may pagkakaiba-iba ang levels ng development ng bawat bata within himself. Ano pa kaya across students? Talagang magkakaiba po. Okay? That's we need to address that. Okay? So, these are just some questions that I would like us, kasama din po ako dito, like us to ask ourselves and let us be aware if we are really cultivating, advocating multicultural education and diversity, inclusive education in the Philippines. Inclusive education, okay? Inclusivity. These are the questions that are based on the 7 principles of culturally responsive teaching by Gary R. Howard, a very well-renowned researcher on inclusive education. Okay, so if you would like to know more, read more about education on taking care of the diversity of learners, do read on Gary Howard on cultural responsive teaching. So this is the first question. Are my students affirmed in their cultural connections? Meaning, hindi ba sila po ba ay proud to be a member of, say, Waray-Waray ako, Bisaya ako, Caviteño ako, Bulakenyo ako, Batanggenyo ako, ano po isa? Marami pa mga kultura. Are they proud? Or, ang mga estudyante po natin ay ikinahihiya ang kanilang kultura kasi nga, there's what we call a stereotyping na pag galing ka sa kultura na yan, parang ang baba ng tingin ng mga tao. So, that's something else that we need to look at. Are my students affirm their cultural connections or I don't know. If you don't know the answer here, definitely of the 7 cultural, multicultural principles that we need to follow, bagsak na po tayo dito sa first element. Okay? Dapat alam natin kung saan ang kagaling mga estudyante natin. Ang tawag po natin ay investigating the student's background. Next, am I personally inviting to all my students or to only the selective ones? Am I approachable? May question. Am I approachable to all my students or only to few students? Or kinakatakutan ako ng mga estudyante ko? Alright. Kasi kung kinakatakutan ka, baka tinuturo mo ay terrorism. Just kidding, okay? Just making myself laugh because that's been a weird day for me talking to myself doing webinars. And number 3, third question is my teaching learning environment physically and culturally inviting? Or the atmosphere, is it inviting for my students? Are my students willing to go back to my online classes? Are my students willing, like before the pandemic, Were my students eager to come back to my classes, or most of them were absent, or most of them were dropping out of school? That could be one of the reasons that they drop out of schools. Would be our environment, our personality, and our attitude towards our students is not as accepting and inviting to our students. Okay, this is what we call as external motivation. We are the external motivation. Number four, are my students reinforced for academic development? When I say reinforced here, do I provide my students enough positive feedback, praising them no matter what no matter how low their performance is, but I still encourage them to do their best? Or pinapagalitan ko sila pag mali ang pagbababa ang performance, pinapagalitan ko sila? Should it be like this, that in multicultural perspective, responsive teaching would be pag mababa ang performance, the more encouraging we become. At may mga teachers po na pag ang mga bata mababa ang performance, mas lalo pa nilang pinapagalitan. E di, anong isipin ng mga bata? Huwag na lang ako pumasok. Alright? Fifth question, do I make instructional changes to accommodate differences? Do we somehow change our lesson the next week if we find out that this week some students are having difficulty with the materials that we have used, or probably the examples that we have used? Are we sensitive enough to the feedback, the body feedback, the body language feedback of our students? Are we sensitive enough to look at the faces of our students, that we are able to interpret whether they are receiving our information, receiving our lessons positively or not? On that note, if we are getting it, are we able to provide changes, make changes in our approaches the next time around? Well, you answer that, guys. We should. Kasi tayo po dapat ang nag-a-adjust. Hindi po natin in-adjust ang standards, but we are trying to adjust the approach, the delivery. Kasi ang standards, di pwedeng compromise. Pero the way we deliver is something that we need to take care of in consideration of the characteristics, okay? The characteristics and profile of our students. And that would be diversity as well. Next would be, do I manage learning situation with a firm, consistent, loving control? Meaning that, do I have discipline among my students without necessarily being angry all the time? Am I firm, or am I more of a person who's always angry and walking, a person who's always at the last minute or any moment that will just explode of anger? Ganun po. So, hindi po kasalanan na maging stricto sa loob ng classroom. Sinasabi po dito na ni Howard is that sometimes being fair means also being fair, that we implement the rules and regulations of the school and the classroom to all students, regardless of the socioeconomic status of the students, regardless of the religious backgrounds of the students. Rules are rules. Yun. And finally, number 7, are the interactions of my students stressful activity as well as individuality? Do I make sure that when I come up with a small group activity, I make sure that they assign specific tasks to every individual member, or I just allow them to do whatever they want? And then at the end of the day, there would be like students complaining that some of the members of the students did not partake in the collective effort in fulfilling the task of the group, and they felt like it was unfair for me to give a grade collectively for all, and yet only 2 or 3 participated in accomplishing the task. Yung mga ganun ba? So dapat pag gumawa tayo ng mga small group activities, nilalagay pa rin po natin ang individual tasks. There would be one member who would do this, another member would do this. So klaro po ang mga tasks. Kahit school, kahit pa yan group, meron pa rin individual, meron pa rin component ng individuality. So if your answers to all of these questions are positive, then I think you are culturally responsive teacher. But if you have 1 or 2 questions that you do not know the answers to, or the answers are negative, sorry for that again, negative, then I think we need to improve on as a teacher to become more responsive to the diversity of our learners. Okay, so let's now answer some of the questions that I have formulated for us to answer. I'll just open up my camera because I look black, dark. There, that's better. Okay, so the first question we have is, what is linguistic and cultural competence? How do we know that our students have already reached, acquired with mastery, linguistic and cultural competence? in the process of the learning process from elementary to high school. What are those manifestations we can see from our students that they have reached this level of competence? Okay, so when we say cultural and linguistic competence, all right, so we're talking about number one, do they value diversity? Uh, do they respect each other despite the fact that they don't really like each other? So they still work with each other, they respect each other despite that they don't like each other. Mga ganun po. Ang Pilipino kasi yung kultura natin is pag hindi na natin, if we don't like the ideas of other people, we don't respect them anymore. Hindi pwede. We are here about ideas. We're not here about people. Okay, so ideas are how we think given a situation. It does not equate of us as a whole person. So it's basically that. So it's situational basis. So we value diversity, that when someone is good or the best in one situation does not necessarily mean that it's best for all situations. Okay, so value diversity. So this is what we do. Malalaman po natin ang bata natin ay culturally and linguistically competent when they know that when they realize that I don't need to like a person, to respect a person. Diba? Alam mo, mahirap na yun eh. That's the one of the many, many difficult things to develop among our students na how do I still respect someone that I don't like? Meron pa lang sinasabi na he's a person, he has rights, so we have to respect him. If you don't like him, if you don't like him, respect him because he's a human being. Respect him for his age. Respect him for. There are many reasons for us to respect a person. Just because we don't like a person. So that's one thing that we need to realize, help our students acquire. Next is as us. Sabi nga ni Catriona, assess. So assess and profile learners. These are the things that we have to do. So for students, they need to know each other. So our students become competent linguistically and culturally if they know each other. So getting to know each other makes them more accepting of each other. Minsan kasi yun po ang problema na dahil wala yung, especially sa pandemic ngayon, yung highly individualized ang ating instruction na hindi nakikita bata, there's a possibility that they do not know each other. They siguro classmate nila before, but iba po kasi yung interaction sa loob ng classroom na you allow them to know each other by having collaborative efforts, by having experiences, academic experience po, it's also an experience that strengthens their camaraderie and rapport. So as assess and profile learners, so getting to know each other. So socialization. Number 3, manage and include in the learning process dynamics and differences. So malalaman po natin dito kung ang mga bata pag nagre-recite na po, they go outside themselves. Like I've heard about my classmate po kasi akong ganito. So they include now examples of other people instead of thinking of just about themselves. Naturally, for people, students po, when they recite, when they give examples, they put themselves at the center of the discussion. Yan naman po talaga. So making people think that some of our students are egocentric. It's not natural. But once our students have this manifestation that when they answer, they consider now the conditions of other people. They answer also on the perspective of other people. They also look at the situations of other people. Then we know that our students are now becoming linguistically and culturally competent. How do we do that? Art of question. All right. What do you think she will do? If you were in her shoes, what will you do? Mga ganun mga empathic questions. Next, we have acquire and institutionalize cultural knowledge. If our students, when they think of their outputs, they include the cultures of other people, like kung sila po ay nagsusulat, they try to include the cultures of other people, not necessarily just the totality of the culture. They could say some of the music of the other culture, some of the food of other people, some practices of other people. Now we know that students have culture. But then again, how can we help our students be able to understand the culture of other people if we do not include that in our lessons? So it's very important that in our lessons we include, that's why it's institutionalized cultural knowledge. Some of the readings that we provide for our students are also reflections of the cultures of other people, not just our own. Number 5, Adapt to diversity and the cultural context of individuals and communities of learners. One thing that is very important is that our students are able to apply. So they become culturally and linguistically competent when they're able to see the connection of what they're learning inside the classroom, outside the classroom. This is what we call as application. Sir, yung mga inisip po namin mga application ng mga activities para sa mga bata allows them to be cultural and linguistic competent? Yes, because that's what we call as applying what we know, applying what we believe in. Because once our students apply something that they believe in, we know it becomes their part of their personality. And once they are able to apply that outside, one way or the other becomes part of their advocacy. Alright? So, yun po ini-encourage sa K-12 po natin na sana po makapag-isip po ng mga teachers ng tasks, okay? LLOS po, expected learning outcomes that allow our students to apply what they have learned in the lesson to situations in their daily lives or in the situation of the local community. Could be local, local, national, or global. All, para naman akong Japanese, hindi mo pronounce R. All right. Now, let me summarize our answer to question number 1. So diversity is defining feature of our world in this time of increasing globalization and migration, and it's reflected in our communities. The learning environment is no exception. Alam mo pa na ang mga bata natin, ang mga estudyante natin have access to, because of social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of those social media, they're able to connect with other people. If not necessarily face-to-face, they're able to see other people in their situations. Kasi nga, especially yung TikTok na yan, nakikita nila yung mga recordings ng mga ginagawa ng mga pamilya, and they get to have a vicarious experience of those experience. Ako nga natutuwa ako sa TikTok, nakikita ko yung mga tao sa Germany, sa Russia, and all. One way or the other, I get to have a simple glimpse, a little glimpse of their culture, which makes me a little bit understanding of who they are as people. So yan po. So yan ang sinasabi po sa question number 1. There's no such thing as similarities of culture in the world. It will always be diversity. Within the culture, there will always be diversity. Within oneself, there's always diversity. Okay, so let's proceed to question number 2. What is social and emotional competence as basis for diversity? All right? Ang kultura po kasi natin, ang basihan po natin ng ating how we perceive the environment and how we perceive other people. So social and emotional development means how individuals start to understand who we are, what we feel, and what we expect when interacting with other people. And how we see other people is based on how we were raised by the culture, especially our family, how we were raised, taught to interact with other people. Like kung tayo po ay tinuruan ng ating mga magulang o ng ating lipunan na sinasabi na hindi po dapat nirerespeto natin ang nakatatanda sa atin na pag sila pa ay nag-uusap-usap, hindi po tayo dapat bigla na lang papasok sa usapan nila, kundi dapat po tayo ay humihingi ng permiso para makapagsalita. So if we were raised that way, we will see all interactions that way. We will consider that age and stature would be a basis for us to how we are able to get in a conversation or get into a social situation. We always have that idea. Pero kung wala po tayong ganong pagpapalaki ng mga magulang sa atin na ganon, siguro wala tayong pakialam kung sino pa nag-usap-usap dyan, basta gusto kong magsalita ako. So malalaman po natin how people interact with other people. It's a reflection of their culture. And we're not saying the culture as a whole, but probably the specific culture in their families, how they were raised. Yung sinasabi ko, kahit pa yan nasa isang buong kultura, iba pa rin ang kultura ang kinalakhan ng bata sa pamilya niya. Yan po ang yan po ang pinaka enduring na kultura na natututunan ng mga bata sa bahay. All right. So it is the development of being able to form and sustain positive relationships. Okay. Next would be experience, manage, and express emotions. Okay. Explore and engage with the environment. So, sa kultura po namin, sa pamilya po namin, talaki kami na mahina ang lalaki, mahina ang isang lalaki kung siya iniiyak. So, if for the time being, it was difficult for me when I see guys crying, ang hina naman yan, bakla yata yan. So these were my perspective. Why? Because this was my belief system, because I was raised that way. This is how I perceive. And my social development is that I should be strong. So kahit nagkaroon ako ng pagkakamali, I will not cry. I will stand my ground. So even if I'm at fault, hindi, paninindigan ko po yun. Because that's how I was raised and that was the culture I came from. But eventually, because I was immersed with other cultures like the Tagalog culture, the other cultures in the world, because I've been interacting with a lot of people with different cultures, I got to realize that I have to improve and that there are some things in my personal culture that are not possibly positive to other people when I interact with them. So I have to incorporate other cultures from other incorporate other belief system from other cultures so that I can improve my social emotional development by allowing our students to listen to stories of our other classmates. We one way or the other we help our students improve their social and emotional development. Kaya recitation is very important. Sharing of the lives of our students inside the classroom is one also very important. So if we can include that as part of our preliminary activities before we start our online classes, or perhaps during our module, we could provide them with journals, something that they would write after the lesson. They would be like open-ended questions about what they felt about the lesson, what they have learned from the lesson, and how they're going to apply the things they have learned from the lesson to real life situation and to address, relational issues. That would be social emotional development as well, right? And be asking students to go out of themselves, not just consider themselves as the only person to be considered in a society. Parang sinasabi pa kasi natin pag ganun, natin ang bata mag-socialize, parang sinasabi nila na ang tao ang mag-a-adjust sa'yo palagi, hindi yung ikaw mag-a-adjust sa tao. All right. So ESL or social emotional development builds the foundation for thriving in life inside and outside the classroom. So this is one of the diversity we need to look into. Kasi dapat matutunan ng mga bata na you will encounter people that will hurt you. You will also encounter people who will encourage you. You will also encounter a lot of people who will put you down. But at the end of the day, you have to choose which of these people you think are you can trust to help you become better persons. So yung mga tao na sa tingin mo ay put you down, bakit mo sasamahan sila? Kaya nga, one way or the other, may failure po ang society sa mga tao. Bakit nagda-drugs? Dahil napupunta sila sa peers na iba ang behavior sa buhay. So bakit sila napunta doon? So one way or the other, perhaps our families, our education, failed our students to be more discerning of what's right, what an acceptable behavior should be. All right? So ang nangyari kasi minsan, hindi tayo understanding, we are more judging. All right? Nakita po natin ang estudyante natin na kasama mga kilala natin na mga durugista, kunwari ng mga estudyante, o kaya walang patutunghan ng mga buhay ng mga estudyante. Then pag dating sa school, ikaw na estudyante, ikaw na bata ka ha, pag nakita kitang sumasama-sama sa mga batang yun na walang patutunguhan, isusubong na kita sa mga magulang mo. What do you think the child would feel if that's how teachers would deal with their behavior? Sana ang ginawa po natin is more honest. Kasi that's the way the teacher dealt with that, the way I just simulated. It is more judging than understanding. Cultural diversity or inclusive education inside the classroom is making understanding the core of how we deal with our students. So instead of judging our students, kasi ito yung sinasabi po natin, mayroong mga anecdotes na nilalabas dati sa mga researches na mga experts on inclusive education. May sinasabi mga bata na mga comments na yung mga teachers kasi namin, feeling nila na intindihan nila kami. Pero ginagamit nila yung kanilang experience para intindihin kami, hindi yung aming experience. Diba? Yung sinasabi na, nako, ang dali-dali lang yan. Nako, bata ka pa, hindi mo na, kaya mo pa, ano pa yan, marami ka pang may experience. Sa isip-isip ng mga bata, ako ang nandito sa sitwasyon to. Wala pa ako sa level mo na marami ka ng experience. So, nasa level pa lang ako na hindi ko pa naintindihan ang mga nangyayari sa buhay ko. Bakit hindi mo ako intindihin na I'm still incapable of handling this situation? Why don't you understand me? Help me to cope with my current situation, not using your own experience. Okay? Hindi kasi tayo nakikinig sa mga bata. We have to listen to our students. I know we don't have enough time. Kaya hindi naman lahat ng mga bata may problema sa mga ganito sa social emotional development. There are only few students in our class that we could identify students have problems, with dealing with other people, behavior problems. And these are the students that we have to, do something about. be more understanding. But we don't have to put them in the hot seat like sometimes showing care to a particular student inside the classroom or in an online classroom. Tapos doon mo sasabihin, instead na they will feel you care for them, parang feeling nila, nilagay mo sila sa hot seat, pinahiya mo siya. So do that in a more private atmosphere where you and someone else, kasi dapat may witness palagi, someone else, not in front of the class or other students na mapapahiya ang bata. Kasi syempre, ang tingin niya, ang problema niya, para sa kanya lang. Bakit kailangan i-broadcast sa ibang tao? So we still have to respect the right of our student for anonymity. All right? Students with strong social emotional skills are those who get along better with others, have an increased ability to manage stress, are more likely to graduate from high school, have key social skills that employers are looking for, people who are able to adjust to the situation, all right? Don't give up easily because of stress. Okay, they thrive in stress. They become better people because of stress. Are less likely to be involved in the criminal system kasi alam nila kung anong tama at mali. All right? So these are the big five that I've already discussed before in the SEL. So you may want to please visit my talk about social-emotional development. So these are the things that need to be developed among our students. Kasi SEL pa lang, diverse na ang mga needs ng mga bata. Emotional regulation, collaboration, open-mindedness, and engaging with others. So bawat area na to, may diversity ka na sa mga bata. Let's proceed to the third question. Third and second to the last question. What is culturally inclusive teaching and learning? How do we know that we are conducting or we are doing inclusive teaching and learning? According to Barker et al., one of the authorities of inclusive education, he said that a culturally inclusive classroom or teaching learning atmosphere or situation is one where students and staff alike recognize, appreciate, and capitalize on diversity so as to enrich the overall learning experience. Meaning, according to Barker, these are teachers, these are teaching personnel, non-teaching personnel in the school, that the differences of people, the differences of students, they use that to their utmost advantage to the students' success of learning. More learning. Okay? Hindi ginagamit yun para kutsain, para pagtawanan yung mga tao. Halimbawa, yung mga tao na may mga disabilities, pinagtatawanan, no, hindi dapat sinasabihin, this is your opportunity to help become a better person by becoming a body system to the person, by becoming a study buddy, ganyan. So instead of laughing and at the person, why not become someone who can help the person? Ganyan dapat ang mga educators. Foster a culturally inclusive learning environment encourages all individuals, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, religious affiliation, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation is different from gender, or political beliefs, to develop personal contacts and effective intercultural skills. So makikita po natin dito na si teacher ay inclusive when he come up or when she comes up with examples na varied po ang example. Hindi ang kanyang sarili lang. Nung panahon ko, ganito. Or examples na dapat ay, if a girl would do this, if a guy would do this, making it that the students are able to understand in different perspectives. Kung kayo ay mas matanda na, yung mga ganyan. Paano kung kayo po ay nasa high school, kung babae ka, kung lalaki ka? Paano kung ikaw ay nasa poorest of the poor? Paano kung kayo mayaman? Anong gagawin mo? You put your students in different perspectives, allowing them to immerse themselves in those perspectives, that already making your classroom, your teaching and learning experience to your students a culturally diverse, inclusive situation. Now, Barker came up with four areas that we need to take care of to ensure multiculturality, or multicultural and inclusive education. All right, so we have cultural inclusive learning environment. Number one, of course, we have positively interact with learners. So these are the things that we need to take care of. So are the students accepting of the differences of their classmates in terms of physical differences? What else? The physical, like color nila, yung buhok nila, What else? May kulot, may straight. Alam mo na, di ba may mga bata na pag straight ang buhok, maganda. Pag maputi, maganda. Pag maitim, salot. Pag kulot, salot. Mga ganun. These are some of the stereotypes of the society. Do we, do we, uh, uh, do we flatten this kind of behaviors inside the classroom by, having our students interact with each other? We don't allow, students who will not interact. So we come up with collaborative activities. Next, we have actively discourage incivility. So hindi yung you just ignore. Do we ignore misbehavior? Do we ignore un, uncivil behaviors of our students towards others? We should not. But again, it's not by pointing out some of the uncivil behaviors of our students does not give us the right to judge them or to put them in a hot seat or to embarrass them. So, pag sinabi nating active discourage civilities, we stop the behavior right there and then. But we continue it on after the situation, after the incident, by having a personal talk with the student. Not, hindi yung sabi, oh, tama na muna yan ha, nagtataral po tayo, hindi yan maganda. So, magsasabihan mo siya. Pero, kailangan mo pa rin i-follow through yung, if you want the student to change his behavior, follow through that by interact with the family, because probably the root of such behavior and belief system comes from the culture where he belongs to or come from. That could be the family. I would definitely say it would come from the family. All right. Next would be encourage open, honest, and respectful interaction. Sabi ni, merong nagsabi sa akin, sir, hindi puro ka nalang pamilya palagi. E paano kung sa television? Saan ba sa nanood? Saan ba sa television? O hindi hinayaan lang ng mga magulang na manood na hindi naman dapat pinapanood ng mga bata. Oo nga, sir. Kahit pa yan nasa television, kahit nasa radyo pa yan, o kahit nasa mga babasahin pa yan, o kahit nasa cellphone na yan, o kung saan, it's because the parents allowed them to have access on those. They don't have clear rules and regulations on what is allowable and not allowable. Well, allowed students to gain other untoward behavior. Hanggat bata ang bata, responsibilidad pa rin yan ng mga magulang. So, huwag natin sabihin po na naging ganyan ang anak ko, hindi ko alam kung bakit. Wow. Hindi mo alam paano naging ganyan ang anak nyo. Our kids, our children are reflections of who we are as parents. We have to be reminded of that. And therefore, teachers out there, it is also true that who our students are, how they behave, how they interact with each other, be it positive or negative, are reflections of how we taught them. This is what inclusive education is. If our students are not they're not respectful of the differences of other people, they are not understanding of other people, especially their classmates and the people outside their classrooms and outside also, teachers could also be part to blame. Next, encourage open and honest, respectful interactions. Yung sinasabi po natin na sabihin mo kung anong sama ng loob mo, pero sabihin mo lang sa tamang pamamaraan. So we encourage students to say, to who we are as a teacher. Kaya maganda po yung sinasabi natin, student evaluation of teachers. That's being honest. So dapat our teachers, masanay po tayo na we seek feedback from our students. Kasi at the end of the day, they are the end users, the receivers of what we plan for. And if the feedback shows that they are not learning and are not receiving what they are supposed to be receiving in terms of quality, then I think that's something that we need to ponder over and something that we have to do about and do some changes in our approach to handling our students and handling the subject matter. Finally, we have use inclusive language and appropriate modes of address. Yung paggamit po natin ng courteous expressions, the use of po, opo, the use of please, something that we need to cultivate among our students. But then again, it's modeled. Kung sinabi natin modeled, how can our students learn how to use courteous expressions when the teacher is not using courteous expression, when the adults they are encountering with, or the adults that they are being raised with, or they are growing up with, are not using courteous expressions. Again, this kind of behavior, this kind of cultural perspectives and belief system are introduced to the students. They are not born with that. They are introduced to it. And if the adults do not have this, do we expect them to have this too? So that's something, again. So what's lacking in our students is also a reflection of what's lacking in the culture. and not just the society. We're not talking about the culture of the society only, but also the culture that uh, we have encouraged and we have cultivated in our classrooms, in our teaching learning atmosphere. So this is what Barker is trying to tell us. If we take care of these four areas, we are now on our way to cultivating culturally inclusive learning environment, positively interacting with the learners, active discourage incivilities, encourage o wag i-ignore po ang mga misbehaviors, encourage open, honest, and respectful interactions. Meron po kaming ginawa nun sa when I was in uh, was a, that's an exclusive school po eh. That's an exclusive school for girls. My first college na tinuruan ko nun. We had this freedom wall. May freedom wall kami na kung saan ang mga bata magbibigay na to Mr. to Sir Aguirre, please, I would like to say thank you for me. Mga ganon na they are able to express their gratitude, not just their gratitude, but also their grudges. Yeah. Pati yung kanilang mga sanaman loob. Kasi pag meron tayong mga freedom wall, pag nailabas ng bata, medyo gumagaan ang pakiramdam nila. Pumapasok sila kinabukasan na wala yung burden. By having those kind of strategies inside the classroom or in online platforms. Siguro pwede naman sa online platforms. Kaya lang, sana private din po sana. Hindi makikita ng ibang tao kasi nakakaya din. Parang pinapahiya din po natin ng mga teachers. So let's come up with a platform where students can voice out their concerns and even gratitude to the teacher, but it should be private. I don't know how it's done, but I think you can come up with a closed group in the messenger. We call that as a group chat, I suppose, or a work chat. I don't know, but the more feedback allows students to talk about what they feel and what they have learned or what they don't understand is something that we need to cultivate too. All right. So to summarize what we have discussed in question number 3 is that cultural competence is the will and the ability to form authentic and effective relationships across differences. That's very nice. Just imagine, just look at those words. Very beautiful. Is the will. Talagang they know it's an active, conscious effort. Okay? Hindi yung bahala na. Hindi. Talagang conscious decision. It's a personal decision kaya will. Ability to form authentic and effective relationships across differences. Yung you don't have to like a person to respect a person. Yung talagang sinasabi nun. It does not stop us from working with other people that we don't like, but we have to work because we are in a group. And we learned that at school. Kung sa school pa lang, kinultivate na natin sa ganun. So they grow up to understanding that hindi ko kailangan friend ang aking kapitbahay, pero hindi ibig sabihin kaaway ko siya. Maring hindi ko gustong kapitbahay ko, but we are in one community, we have to support each other. Mga ganun. Right? Not necessarily having, sabotaging. This experience ko, katatapos lang experience sa kapitbahay. Anyway, next, let's go to the last question. So the last question is, what are the strategies now that foster an inclusive learning atmosphere for all learners? I would like to suggest 4 strategies that's very effective. Number 1, overcoming stereotypes. How do we do this? Sorry, mali po ang aking order ng aking PowerPoint. So number 1, of course, is to engage students effectively in learning process. We must know the students and their academic abilities. This is what we call as profiling. I already talked about profiling. I think that was during the last week of September or the first week of October. I'm not sure. Let's go back to the webinars in Vival. I already talked about profiling. This is what we call as profiling because the stereotypes come from the profiles of our students. When we talk about profile, we're talking about the social emotional development of our students, their language development, their mental development, their physical development. So all of this are contribute to possible stereotypes of our students, not to mention the culture that they come from. So how do we take care of this? Number 1 would be cognitive and mental skills, developing their cognitive and mental skills by helping our students become more critical and more creative in their processing of information. They become more tolerant, more open-minded to other possibilities and other differences. So, hanggat mas mababa kasi ang pag-iisip, mas hindi open sila. Kaya nga po, yung mga tao na matitigas ang ulo sa lipunan, sila po talaga ang hindi natulungan na maging critical ang pag-iisip. Sir, kanino kasalanan po yun? I'm not sure. I don't want to blame someone else, but critical thinking and creative thinking kasi is taught in the school. So it starts there, and then it continues on to other platforms that could be when they in college, education pa rin, when they work with other people. But nonetheless, the teaching of critical thinking skills and creative thinking skills really emanate from the school, the formal teaching of it. So I think the school is partly to blame, education is partly to blame if we have citizens walking around who they don't care about other people. That would be mental skills capacity. Next is self-motivation, discipline, and study habits. We also need to look into that students who do not have support at home. Okay, stereotypes po at home na ang meron po to be honest, may mga stereotypes pa ako na-encounter na babae po naman kasi yan, kaya ganyan, mag-aaral po talaga. Eh, lalaki po yan, talaga maglalaro muna yan. May mga ganyan ako narinig ng mga magulang nagsasabi na, Sir, lalaki yan, talaga mag-isip muna ng paglalaro. Eh, babae po talaga yan, mas disiplinado, kaya, okay, fine. But then again, are we looking at gender? Are we looking at gender and stereotypes? Are we inculcating to our students that pag babae, ganyan talaga ang behavior. Pag lalaki, ganyan ang behavior. Bakit ba? Ang babae hindi pwede maglaro? Hindi pwede maging playful? Bakit ang lalaki, pag ang lalaki naging disiplinado na, hindi na lalaki? So hindi, ang self-motivation and discipline and study habit does not choose any gender, does not choose any culture. It is something that should be shared and should be inculcated in all students, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what gender they have, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sex, regardless of their culture. It is something that should be universally given to them. Diba? Ayun ang sinasabi natin ng universal skills. Okay, next would be language literacy and numeracy skills. Again, universal yan. It does not, hindi pwedeng sabihin natin, babae kasi yan, kaya madaldal, magaling sa language. O lalaki yan, kaya magaling sa math. Ano yun? Bakit? Ang math pang lalaki lang, hindi pwede sa babae? Tayo na pong nagagawa ng mga stereotypes na ganyan. So, ibig sabihin pa, pag engineer, hindi pwede maging babae. Pag sundalo, dahil nga mas medyo physical, hindi na pwedeng babae. These are stereotypes of society. The way we view some skills, how we view intelligence, how we view skills, is so much associated to sex and gender, or associated to age. Na bata ka pa, dapat ito lang nagagawa mo. O pag matanda ka na, medyo taga-supervise ka na lang. Pag bata ka, dapat marami kang ginawa. These are stereotypes that we need to eradicate. If not, well, I think manage muna kasi mahirap naman tanggalin agad. We have to manage and eventually move on towards eradication because it's only another generation who would stop this kind of stereotypes. And hopefully teachers like us would do something about, gradually making students understand that these types of skills, these skills are universal. They do not choose any gender. Social emotional skill. Ibig sabihin po ba nito, pag ang palakaibigan dapat lalaki, ang babae dapat hindi palakaibigan, dapat tahimik lang, nasa gilid lang, sa sulok-sulok. Ang babae dapat hindi nakipag-interact sa ibang tao kasi babae siya. Hindi maganda. I mean, they were coming up with their own stereotypes. That's something we need to look into. All right. So when we write in our module, so overcoming stereotypes is that in our module, we have to be very careful. Example po, may mga pictures ang nakikita sa mga libro na ang nagluluto si nanay at si tatay nakahawak ng newspaper tas may kape. What kind of information are we telling our readers na ang pagluluto pang babae at si nanay ay dapat, ang mababae dapat nasa kusina at habang nagluluto si nanay, si tatay ay hayahay at nanonood. So what do you think will the boys associate themselves with in the picture? Another one, sa mga commercials po natin. Ang commercials po natin, pag mga washing machine, pag mga kitchenwares, ang mga models na babae. Pero pag cars, mga lalaki, what are we telling our society about? That this kind of things are gender-based? I would appreciate it if someone would be more sensitive that it has to be both sexes. So kung kitchenware, edi puros babae at lalaki nandoon kasi hindi man lang babae ang concern in kitchenwares, pati lalaki din dapat. Kaya ang nangyari sa society tuloy, sasabihin ng pag nag-jowa-jowa na, sorry, jowa-jowa talaga. O nagrelasyon na lang, doon na lang tayo. That's a better word, I think. Nagrelasyon na, sasabihin kasi pag ikaw babae, o pag lalaki ganito, di ba? Oh, come on, people. Let us go for not equality, but equitable. Okay, equitable understanding. Hindi naman ibig sabihin na kailangan pantay-pantay lahat kasi there are things that boys can do and women cannot do. Especially pag bubuntis, hindi kaya nila lahat yan. So there are things that are uniquely universal and there are also things that uniquely can be done by specifically by boys and girls. Especially for when we talk about, say, physiology. Next strategy is design culturally relevant curriculum. All right, how do we do that? So ito po yung sinasabi natin sa school na horizontal articulation, vertical articulation, also known as curriculum mapping. By doing curriculum mapping, we do content integration. We make our students realize that what they learn from one subject is connected to other subjects. And as students realize that what they learn from one subject to another makes them a holistic person, a holistic learner. Hindi sila pwedeng, dapat ma-realize ng bata by doing content integration, by teachers collaborating together, it allows our students to see that that all of the things, that the knowledge and skills and values and ethics and attitude that they learn from one subject to another, help them put it together in order to address and act on certain situations. Sorry again, may ginagawa po kasi building sa kapitbahay kaya maingay po ng konti. Pasensya po tayo. All right. Second would be knowledge construction. The knowledge construction is the use of taxonomy, that we allow our students to learn lower order thinking skills and higher order thinking skills. Yan po yung knowledge construction. So yan sinasabi niya, so sir, yung paggawa po namin ng yung pag-level namin ng mga activities po namin, learning competencies from lower order to higher order thinking skills, already doing inclusive education. Yes, kasi sabi ko nga sa inyo, ang diversity is not lang across students, but also within students. So knowledge construction helps students to develop all of those mental skills. So knowledge construction, and that's the use of the taxonomies. Next is prejudice reduction. So kung sinabi natin prejudice reduction, sabi kanina natin ni Barker na dapat hindi natin in-encourage ang mga misbehavior, especially towards gender, towards culture. So incivilities are not acceptable, but it does not mean that we're going to be judgmental of our students as well, or we shout at our students. We still be civil. Okay? Sabi nga natin, uncivil na ang estudyante natin, tapos pinagalitan mo ba din? Uncivil ka rin. So how do we deal with uncivil behaviors with civility? Diba? It cannot be uncivil behavior addressed with uncivil behavior as well. So negative. Parang gano'n. Next, we have equity pedagogy. Ito yung sinasabi natin na equity pedagogy is something that we need to help our students see that there are things that can easily be applied in situations, and there are some things that we learn that may be for future use. Kasi may mga bata nagsasabi na, sir, hindi nag-aaral po kami, parang hindi naman namin makita na kailangan namin naman na sa buhay namin. So dapat sinasabi ng teacher na you will use this when you become engineers or when you reach college. These are some of the skills needed there. It may not be applied now, but these are knowledge and skills that you will need for future use. Ayan. Kung wala talagang actual applications. Equity pedagogy also helping students respect the differences of people. Okay? By integrating articles, social issues in our lessons makes our students understand the perspectives of other people as well. And that's equity pedagogy as well. So maganda po nag-include po tayo ng mga current events in our lessons. That would also help our students in develop understanding of other people's perspective. Of course, next would be school climate and atmosphere. Ito po yung sinasabi natin na all teachers, even the personal and non-personal, see each other as part of the school, as a community. Hindi yung pag-janitor, hindi nire-respeto. Pag-guard, hindi nire-respeto. Hindi pwede. Lahat ng miyembro ng school, kaya mafe-feel kasi ng mga bata na, pag-guard, hindi naman, sinisigaw lang ng mga teachers namin, dinadaan lang ng mga teachers. So, ganun din ang mga bata, paano magtrato ng mga guard. So, one way how we deal with the people with, menial jobs, how, these teachers and school personnel deal with them, yan po ang nakukuha rin na behavior ng mga bata. Pero hindi lang si teachers, pati mga magulang, pati yung mga tao sa lipunan. Alright? So this is designing culturally curriculum. Next is honor home language. Alam mo na po natin yung MTBMLE. So we are trying to encourage that we help our students become rooted in their own culture and have pride of their own language as well, because language is is a product of culture. So teaching it is culturally and linguistically diverse classrooms can be challenging without a distinct set of strategies and approaches, yet these learners enrich the school environment exponentially. So yung mga bata na marami ang school, klase po na ang estudyante are linguistically diverse, it's a good situation to be in. So how do we know that? So dapat alam natin pa mga linguistic backgrounds ng mga estudyante natin. And I think the Department of Education has already provided us with how are we supposed to identify ways how to identify the linguistic backgrounds of our students. So yan po, know the students as individuals, not as collective. Kasi kahit pa yan ang mga bata galing sa isang lipunan, sa isang komunidad, maaari po kasi ang isang bahay po, isang pamilya ay nag-decide na English po ang home language nila. Meron naman po ay kung mga Bisaya po yan, kaya sa amin. Pipiliin po ng ibang mga Bisaya ng mga pamilya na Bisaya ang kanilang unang language mga bata because of pride of their home language. But then again, choice po yan ng family na. So we need to know that. Next, support the home language in the classroom. So if we have identified that our students inside the classroom, we have students who know how to speak English and students who know how to speak Filipino, people who speak Bisaya and speak Tagalog. So we should support those too. Unless, of course, you do not know Bisaya, you could probably ask us, halimbawa, nagtuturo ka ng mga pictures, mga concepts, halimbawa, nagpakita ka ng picture ng mangga, and you say, ibon pala, bird. In English, this is ibon in Tagalog. So, Mark, in your language at home, that's Bisaya, right? What is the word for this picture? So, you acknowledge that this child is coming from a different culture, and yet you respect him or her that concept exists in their culture, and that by asking the student to partake in the discussion, other students who do not share the same language and culture get to understand, ganun pala yun. So, hindi nagkakaintindihan sila, hindi tatawan, ano ba yan? Imbak nila. Because we have not exposed our students to this type of kind of exposure inside the classroom, of multilingual approach inside the classroom, then, kaya ang nangyayari kasi sa Pilipinas, palagi sasabihin na, mali pronunciation, Bisaya ka talaga. Ganun, Bisaya agad. Di ba pwede na mispronounce lang? Nagkagat ang dila. I know. Masakit po minsan, pero sabi ko, mayaman na lang sila. Sometimes I just brush it off my shoulder and said, bahala kayo, kasi kamang-mangan po niyan. So, it's either I have time to explain or not. Wala, no? What was the point of explaining? Graduate na sila, they could have learned that inside the classroom. So it's not our responsibility anymore. It's their own. Now, because they are graduates, it's their own personal responsibility to know more and not less. All right? Use books and materials to foster cross-cultural understanding by using some readings that allow students to be immersed in other cultures. Kaya malaki po ang role ng Araling Panlipunan sa cross-cultural understanding. Kasi via Araling Panlipunan at edukasyon sa kapwa-tao, natututunan ng mga bata ang iba't ibang ugalian ng iba't ibang kultura sa Pilipinas at hindi lang sa Pilipinas, kundi sa Asia at sa buong mundo. Kaya lang again, bakit nga may subjects tayo sa ganun, pero mga estudyante natin judgmental? Nasa pagtuturo po yan. Kasi baka ang tinuro lang ay konsepto, pero hindi tinuro ang values. Let's remember that we're not only on knowledge, but also the application of knowledge via values and how we interact with other people. And finally, we have, not finally, but second to the last, that's collaborate with families. It's very important with the collaborate with families because we will not be able to know who our students are. Sometimes ang behavior ng bata sa bahay ay ibang behavior. Ang behavior ng bata sa school, iba rin behavior sa bahay. So we need to collaborate with our parents so that we are able to address these behaviors of our students. Finally, we need to provide students with opportunities to share about their home life. Sharing is very important. Ano ba naman lang, like 15 minutes before, I think what I like most about my experience with PNU, galing po kasi ako sa UP noon eh. Tapos, kumuha ko ng education sa PNU. What I like about PNU sa UP kasi is sink or survive, sink or swim. Pagdating sa PNU, nasyak ako kasi nga tulungan. And I was highly individualistic kasi nasanay ako na kanya-kanya talaga. I get to uh, para bang the idea of family, that we need to collaborate, that we cannot learn things on our own, although we can learn things on our own, but we need other people to support us with that. So that's something that we need to help our us. So ako po, na-realize ko po din yun. So that's something that we need to help our students realize too, that by sharing sharing our experiences, we get to learn from the experience of other people as well. 15 minutes lang. Kasi sa PNU, sharing po talaga sila. Kami noon, sharing kami 15 minutes. It's good. Not sharing about your own experience, sharing of an article that you have read. Very nice. And then finally, we have inclusive strategy. So these are the inclusive strategy. Use multiple diverse examples. So yung sinasabi ko nila na wag lang isang example, kundi examples that cuts across cultures, cuts across gender, cuts across sexes. Next, establish ground rules for interaction. So clear rules and implementation of the rules really help cultural and inclusive education. Strive for fairness. I know that hindi po natin maiwasan na magkaroon po tayo ng favoritism sa loob ng classroom. I do. I have been a teacher for how many years before I became a consultant. And hindi talaga natatala. We can control our favoritism so to a certain particular group, but meron po ta rin talaga. We have to admit that. Do not deny that. So teachers will all, kahit pa mga magulang, may favorite din ng mga anak. So what we do is, let us not deny that we have favorites, but we have to strive to be fair to all students. Okay, let us, yun sinasabi ko, let us accept that we have favorites in our class or in our children, but let us strive harder to show fairness and equal show of emotion to our students and our children. Be mindful of low ability cues. May mga bata na medyo, kahit fair po, may mga bata na mas kailangan natin ang attention natin. Yung mga hina na naglalag behind, so they need more attention. Okay? Next, provide accommodations for students with disabilities. Ito yung mga, yun po, inclusivity ng schools na allowing students na mayroong impairments, disabilities, allows inclusive education too. Not to make fun of them. Some kids would make fun of them, make calling names. Dapat rules and regulations ng school na dapat respeto po. Don't ask people to speak for an entire group. Pero kung sinasabi na, okay, so siya na lang ang magsasalita for the group. No, dapat democracy is allowing our students to voice out. Okay, we will have 15 minutes to voice out your concerns. We'll listen to all those concerns, then come up with a consensus. Yung po sinasabi po natin na maganda po mayroong officers sa classes. Sana po may continue pa rin po natin within online classes na mayroon pa rin class officers. That's a good way to develop inclusive education among our students. All right. Now, at this point, I'm now willing to answer questions before I end my session with a parable. Yes, Michelle?
Thank you po, Brother Ricky. So we have here some questions. The first one is from Miss Agnes Paraiso. How can we approach discussing our religious beliefs with our students, especially if theirs is different from our beliefs?
Yun yung po sinasabi natin na let us not discuss religion. Let us discuss belief and faith and values and virtues. Kasi ang virtues and values are more universal than religion. Kasi pag religion po talaga, mayroon po tayong pagkakaiba-iba talaga ng relihiyon. Pero there is one commonality, the belief system. Paniniwala po na pagrespeto sa mga tao, pagrespeto sa life, pagprotekta sa life. So this is what we call as universal truths. Universal truth encompass differences in religion. I think that's what the faith right now is trying to do is to become more inclusive. Now, let us not talk about religion. Let's talk about faith. When we talk about faith, we talk about the behavior and the value system that we should acquire in order to help other people, help ourselves. Be respectful of other people, be respectful of the environment, and be respectful of our faith and our religious system. Ganun po. Hindi na po tayo nung panahon kasi namin, ang pinag-usapan ay religion. Pero ngayon ang pinag-usapan na po ay more of faith kasi religion is more institutional. Kahit anong faith pa yan meron pa ng paniniwala about goodness. Ako po lang kung merong religion na ang pinag-usapan ay hindi goodness. Hindi ko po alam. Pero the religions that I know are towards helping people become better people in terms of expressing their faith by doing good to other people. Doing good to other people, doing good to the environment, praising God. These are universal truths. So wala tayong quarrel doon sa mga goodness. Ang quarrel lang kasi minsan is yung specifics ng religions like believing in saints, believing in Mama Mary, and mga ganun mga differences. So sa diversity kasi ng religion, we go beyond the context of institution of the religion. We go beyond that. Kaya pag sinabi po natin ng religion, ano ang pagkakapapareho ng mga reliyon? And we have found out that the similarities of the different religions is towards the idea of goodness. What is right and what's good, what's moral and what's not, what is acceptable to the eyes of our Lord, and what is acceptable to making good to other people, and what's right. Sorry po, meron lang ko pinulot.
Thank you po, Brother Ricky. And our last
Sorry
question
po, mayroon po. Huwag po natin sabihin na sa reliyon namin kasi ganito yon. So, huwag pong sasabihin ng teacher na ano po sa reliyon namin. Kayo sa reliyon ninyo, ano naman sinasabi. Parang ang ginagawa nyo, you're compartmentalizing what's right based on religion. So, huwag nyo go beyond that. So, kahit pa ang mga estudyante, especially for the public schools na ang mga estudyante ay coming from different religion, we have to be ecumenical. So, go for general truths than religion. Minsan kasi kung anong reliyon ng teacher, yun po ang naipapasok na relihiyon sa mga bata. At talagang aalma ang mga magulang dyan. Diba? Kaya sabi nga natin, ang mga, since the public school is non-sectarian, dapat walang cross. Kasi nangyari po dun sa loob ng classroom, ang cross lang nakikita, relihiyon. Hindi, meron po tayong sinasabi na faith corner. Sa faith corner, dapat nandun lahat ng emblems ng mga representative ng religions na meron sa klase. Kung meron po tayong klase na meron pong mga Muslim po ang paniniwala, lalagyan po natin ng emblem nila doon. So kung ano ang kaya sinasabi ko kanina, check the backgrounds of the students. When you have checked the background of the students, kasama ang religion nila. So it should be represented inside the classroom. But you go beyond the religion, the institution. Go for universal truths. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ricky. And our last question po is from Miss Corinne Castillo. How can we address cultural diversity po in classroom? What effective strategies or techniques po can you advise us? Thank you po.
Alright. Unang-una po muna talaga na strategy po natin is one, calling them by their names. Okay? Which one is safe? Depende sa culture po natin. Sa Pilipinas po, we call our students by their first name. Pag medyo, sa atin po, pag by first name po is we are being respectful. Pag tinawag po natin ang bata sa kanilang family name, galit na po tayo. Yun po yung ating o kumpletong pangalan, galit na po. So, the first perspective is making our students see pride of who they are in terms of their name. Very, very basic po. I will start with the basic, the names. Ang problema po kasi, ang mga bata have more association to their nicknames than their real names. Then no matter how teachers call the students, no matter how teachers become more culturally understanding of the names of the students, tawag siya ng tawag, hindi pala sumasagot ang bata dahil ang bata hindi niya ma-recognize ang kanyang pangalan kasi mas sanay siya na tinatawag sa nicknames. So one of the things that names. So in the classroom or in online classes, call them by names. And try not to laugh at funny family names. May mga family names kasi tayo sa Pilipinas na nakakatawa. May classmate ako kasi dati, meron akong estudyante dati, ang kanyang apelyido ay Paco. Tapos ang sunod po ay Martillo. PM, di ba? PM. So, Paco, Martillo. Tapos may mga bata nagtatawanan. Ako, sir, magkatabi po yan. Ako, magpupukpukan na po yan. Sabi ko, please, these are family names and we need to respect because these are identities of your classmates. These are not things. These are family names. Hindi to common names. So, dapat sinasabi ko kanina, incivilities, do not, yung apat na yun na strategies na sinasabi ko, na positive interaction. Positive interaction in the classroom na dapat hindi natin tinatanggap yung mga incivilities. We do not accept misbehavior, especially towards demeaning other people in terms of body shaming. Pag sinabi natin body shaming, pag mataba, iba tatawagin na baboy. Yan po ang mga common ng causes po sa loob ng classroom ng away-away at saka unrest. Simple lang naman po ang cultural differences ng mga estudyante na nakikita sa loob ng classroom. Hindi naman talaga yung belief system per se na pag matanda kasi yung talagang, what's your opinion on this? Hindi labanan ng belief system ang nasa classroom. Mababaw po, di ko na sinasabi, pero sa kanila malalim, yung ang bata madaling masaktan sa tawagan ng pangalan. Yes po. So doon pa lang po, strategy-wise, kailangan po natin irespeto ang mga pangalan ng mga bata and not call names. Secondly, of course, you have to be firm with the rules and regulations of the classroom. Be firm, ano ang simula pa lang sa klase, ano ang acceptable, anong hindi, ano ang mga mistakes, anong punishments, ano ang mga limitations. So, doon pa lang klaro. Pero hindi pwedeng you just tell the students meron kasi akong nakita mga teachers na nagbibigay lang ng rules and regulations para lang takutin ng mga bata. Pero along the way, habang tumatagal ang pagkaklase, hindi naman niya inaalala ang mga rules and regulations. May mga pagkakamali mga bata, pero hindi naman niya nasusunod ang mga rules and regulations. So it's not just saying the rules and regulations of the classroom, but also implementing them. Sometimes it hurts us a lot when we try to give sanctions. Huwag naman punishment. Sanctions to some students. But again, rules are rules. On that note, we're teaching our students to respect. Okay? Yun lang naman talaga ang goal ng inclusive education, respect of diversity. So whether the difference is on rules, belief system, names, body shapes, body color, ethnicity, it boils down to the idea of respect. So kung patanungin po ako ng maraming strategy, isa lang po ang tuturo ko po yung strategy. Teach your students to respect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Ricky. That's all the questions that we have for now. We can proceed po to your last reminders for our viewers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mga isang oras pa ang aking last reminders. Ha? Just kidding. All right. So, this is a challenge though. So, we need to understand that diversity is a fundamental aspect of our society. Sabi ko kanina, hindi mawawala. So, diversity will always be there. Differences will always be there. But we need to respect diversity. We need to respect differences. All right. Workplaces, schools, and early learning services. Culture is one significant contributor of diversity. Okay. So we have to accept that we are coming from different cultures, and that note, we will be having different perspectives of things. And hence, it doesn't make us that does not make us think that we should be different totally from other people and isolate ourselves from them. Next, learners need the ability to work with a diversity of people. So, si teacher po dapat natuturo doon. Anong strategy po paano mag-work in diverse po? Collaborative activities. Pag nagawa ka ng collaborative activities, maglagay ka ng specific. Okay, kaya ng ginagawa namin sa Sisters of Mary sa aming mga activities. Pag sinabi pong groups, how many members of groups are there? Sir, 5 po in a member. Okay, kung 5 ang miyembro bawat grupo, anong gagawin ng bawat miyembro? Sir, yung isa po ang tagasulat, isa po yung facilitator. So ilalagay mo doon. So 5 groups, ito ang mga leaders. That alone is already teaching our students diversity, respecting of diversity. That now we are in a group, but we have different responsibilities and roles, and yet we collaborate with each other. Despite our different roles, we are able to work as one. So collaborative or collaboration, one of the 21st century skills, is also a way as a strategy for our students to learn respect of diversity. On that note, sana po matutunan po natin na magkaroon ng collaborative but independent learning. Next, because the changing global environment requires us to engage with people from many different backgrounds and worldviews, and to work with diversity of ideas to solve increasingly complex real-world challenges. So, matututunan ng mga bata na to let go of things na something that they cannot control. Kagaya po nangyari sa akin noon. There was a time na I was in Singapore that I was looked down. I was looked down by an American linguist looked down on me because I was Filipino. And then I wasn't presenting yet. And he said, oh, so you are Filipino. And what research are you going to present? Sabi niya, what research are you going to present? We were in a hotel with all the experts. I was coming from I was a representative from the Philippines. And all of a sudden they said that kasi talaga at that time, ang definition nila ng Filipino ay yaya. Walang eksperto sa mga language, walang eksperto ng mga Pilipino na parang wala sa kanilang kultura na magkakaroon ng mga eksperto galing sa Pilipinas again. So all of a sudden, ang tawag nga sila akin this, but later on po, kasi mayroon silang term sa akin. And then during our conversation, why are you so good with English? And since like you are very articulate with your ideas and using the English language, did you study in the United States? And I said, no, I all my degrees and all my education are all from the Philippines. Really, what school is that? So I mentioned, I never heard of that school. Sabi ko, sa utak-utak, sarap mo tirisin ka, feeling Amerikano ka, kasi kadal pa Amerikano ka, feeling kami mga Pilipino, wala kaming alam. Okay, okay. And so, ang dami na. So I just had to control myself and said, that's his perspective of me. If that's his perspective, that is not my limitation. That's his limitation of his culture. That's when I get to realize, dapat ganito tayo magturo sa mga bata na bakit ka magkipag-away sa mga tao na iba ang tingin sa atin? Hindi natin problema kung paano sila tumingin sa atin. That's their problem. So let go of that. Kung ganun ang tingin ng mga Amerikano, that's not our limitation. That's their limitation. Ganun sila kamang-mang sa kultura natin. Dapat ganun ang pagkakaturo natin sa mga bata na you don't have to fight something that you know that you will not win. You will not win because they are limited in their perspective. You may understand their situation. You have a better understanding. So just let go of it and understand them. That's how limited their perspective of the world is. Okay? So in schools, so to end my short story there, ang tawag nila sa akin after my presentation then, sabi nila, oh my goodness, you're brilliant. So I'll call you now on that short Filipino intelligent guy. Sabi ko, Diyos mio, may short pa. Okay, short, intelligent Filipino guy. Talagang nandun yung mga descriptions. Sabi ko, nako, titirsin talaga kita. Pero I had to let go. Sabi ko, that's how racist. Okay, that's how racist the Americans are. Especially the experts. I'm not saying all of them, but based on my experience, most of them are. All right. So in schools, the task of managing heterogeneous classroom is a key teaching challenge. So kaya nga po ginawa po natin sa K-12 ang heterogeneous kasi nga to have diversity in the classroom. With homogeneity kind of sectioning, and it's, just having one type of, but then again, pwede rin kasi homogeneous din, pero diverse pa rin po ang basic needs sa mga bata. Pero mas maganda kasi ang heterogeneous kasi it allows our students with more interaction with different, capabilities of other students. Next, it is essential for teachers and schools to create positive and learning environments and instructional strategies that support learning outcomes which are aligned to standards and core curriculum. Ito sinasabi na collaboration. Pero mayroong independent activities. So, hindi po yan nabibigay ng Department of Education. Tayo po nag-isip po ng mga activities na yun. So, they fall under formative assessment. So, with that formative assessment, it allows our students to make mistakes. Okay? Now, okay, the idea also, thank you very much, I remember that. Part also of diversity is allowing students to commit mistakes. We need to allow our students to understand that part of growing, part of becoming better in whatever you do is also making mistakes. But we need to learn from our mistakes. From our mistakes, we get to realize what we did wrong and what we have done, what we should have done better, so that the second time around, we do not do the same and commit the same mistakes and become, rise above and become better individuals. So that's the idea of that's also one of the core of diversity, allowing mistakes. Nagkamali kasi ako ng pagsagot kasi doon eh. Nagkamali pa ako ng paggawa ng aking responsibility. So mistakes are core of open-mindedness, the core of becoming better. I would like to read this parable. I think I've read this parable already, but it struck me so much about diversity and allowing our students to, become better by interacting with other people. And when we say interacting with people, does not necessarily mean that it will always be positive. Along the way, there will be negative situations. But what we want our students to learn is that interacting with other people doesn't mean that we have to be friends with them or to like them. It's always, respecting them. So let's read the parable of the pencil. The pencil maker took the pencil aside just before putting him into the box. There are 5 things you need to know, he told the pencil, before I send you out into the world. Always remember them and never forget, and you will become the best pencil you can be. 1. You will be able to do many great things, but only if you allow yourself to be held in someone's hand. Tayo yun, mga teacher. Wait, bakit umalit ka? Two, you will experience a painful sharpening from time to time, but you will need it to become a better person. A better pencil. Tayo po yung nagsasharpen sa mga bata. At ang mga experiences na binibigyan natin sa mga bata. Three, you will be able to correct any mistakes you might make. Yung sinasabi natin, we allow our students to make mistakes. And because by allowing our students to make mistakes, we are there to help them become better. Four, the most important part of you will always be what's inside. Okay? What changes happening inside you as an individual. And next, why is this not moving? And five, on every surface you are used on, you must leave your mark. No matter what the condition, you must continue to write. So kahit mayroon maraming experience na bad, continue pa rin kasi it's your role to leave a mark. The pencil understood and promised to remember and went into the box with a purpose in its heart. Now, replacing the place of the pencil with you, always remember them and never forget, and you will become the best person you can be. One, you will be able to do many great things, but only if you allow yourself to be held in God's hand or by the teacher and allow other human beings to access you for the many gifts you possess, sharing, especially for differences. Two, you will experience a painful sharpening from time to time by going through various problems in life, but you'll need it to become a stronger person. Three, you'll be able to correct any mistakes you might make. So, dapat hindi tayo takot sa opportunities and making mistakes along the way. Four, the most important part of you will always be what's on the inside. And five, on every surface you walk through, you must leave your mark. No matter what the situation, you must continue to do your duties. So I leave this message of the parable to you. A question. Our students only remember two types of teachers: the best teachers and the worst teachers. Choose which one you want to be remembered. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you. And I hope to see you tomorrow afternoon when I talk about with another strand of PPST domain 3. Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon.
There we have it. In behalf of Ibal Group, I would like to thank you, Brother Ricky, for being our speaker for today for this inspiring and insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, sir. And to all our Kabibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. We encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Bibal Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli maraming salamat at magandang araw sa atin lahat. Goodbye, everyone.